All right. I'm going to start you guys off with a little video just so you can see what it is we do. Okay, I apologize for having the worst operating system in the universe at an open source conference. A little bit of a driver problem, so hope you guys won't, you'll forgive me for that. All right, as you know, my name is John Diamond, and I'm the CEO and lead developer of COR Entertainment. I'm here to talk to you about open source gaming, of course, which is a first for Posscon. So I hope you find this pretty informative and maybe even a little entertaining. We can keep it pretty interactive if you want, so if you got any questions along the way, just feel free to ask. I'd like to thank Todd Lewis and everyone involved with this conference. It's an amazing job. Very flattered to have been invited to be a part of it. So a little background about COR Entertainment. We were formed in 1999. We're a group of 3 amateur software developers that had a common passion for first-person shooter games and an interest in open source software. We released several titles along the way. The first was in 1999, and it was called Alteria, and it was basically a first-person shooter game combined with some elements of role-playing games. In 2002, we released Battle for Earth, which was a retro sci-fi shooter. It was a single-player game. And then we followed that up in 2003 with The Martian Chronicles. And that was a sequel to Battle for Earth. Unfortunately, after the release of The Martian Chronicles, the remaining 2 members of COR both left for personal reasons. So alone, I began brainstorming the next idea, which was Alien Arena, which I just showed you. The original concept behind this game was to be an online deathmatch game in which people could choose players that were based on characters of famous movie aliens. I contacted a few movie studios, Warner Brothers and some others, and of course they denied me permission to use them without a fee. So at that time I decided it was probably a better idea to base it on the Code Red universe of characters, which was aliens and robots and humans. Let's see. After Alien Arena was out, by 2006, we started getting a little momentum, and some developers joined us. Currently, we stand at 5 developers. We have a number of other contributors that submit bug fixes and patches and things like that. So Alien Arena. That's our primary ongoing project. We've been working on it for 7 years. It's built from open source software, not just the software that was released by id, but a variety of other sources, which is something I'll talk about a little later. By 2005, we had ported the game over to Linux. Originally, when we put out our beta in 2004, it only ran on Windows. Once we ported it to Linux, the game started gaining a little bit of momentum. Since then, we've gained quite a bit of popularity. It's been featured in a number of magazines, a number of cover DVDs. We've been written up in PC Gamer 3 times, I believe. We've been downloaded 2 million times, thereabouts, to date. Currently, we stand at version 7.51, which we released about 3 weeks ago. Over the years, the game has evolved quite considerably. I'm sure I've talked to a lot of you about this. Pretty much rewrote the entire renderer and sound system. Vastly improved the lighting, added OpenGL shaders, changed the model format from a vertex-based over to a skeletal-based so that we could do ragdoll physics using the Open Dynamics physics engine. Changed the water effects. I could go on and on for a while, and I will talk about more of this in the 2-hour workshop on Friday. So what I want to do real quick is run through some slides to show you the evolution of the engine over the years. We're going to focus on one aspect of it, which is the rendering of the character itself. So here you have the game in our beta form in 2004. As you know, this is based off of the software from id. Basically, this is a flat shaded model. It's got a clear helmet on it with a static texture. It doesn't really move around, and it's not very convincing. It's basically the same way that Quake 2 rendered back in '97, since this is what it's based off of. In 2005, we added a scripted shader system. You can see the helmet now has a environment map similar to like what Quake 3 did with its health globes. Can't really get my mouse to move around. You got some glowing bits on the body. There's a variety of other shaders that we added that you don't really see here, but that was like our first significant step in the rendering rewrite. In 2006, we added light bloom, and it looks like we were a little bit enamored with the new technology because it's really cranked up to the max in this screenshot. It'd probably burn your eyes out. In 2007, we added vertex lighting, which is something that we actually had in 2003, but we had to yank it out of the engine because it just ran way too slow for a deathmatch online multiplayer game like that. What you have here basically is sort of an ambient occlusion where the mesh itself is self-shadowing. So you got a light source in front of it, and the areas behind it are dark. Now in 2007, that was pretty far behind the times, but we were trying to catch up with these commercial games. In 2008, we replaced all the artwork. Just ripped it all out, redid it. So there's the new alien. And then later that year, we started working on normal mapping. As you can see with the brain, the texture itself is actually self-shadowing. In this example here, it's not really completed. There's no specular highlights, which is basically the reflection of light off of the surface. You can see that the helmet now has an actual reflection in it from the environment around it. The biggest problem we had at this time was that it rendered very slow. We were using fixed function OpenGL to achieve this. So with that in mind, we switched over to the OpenGL shading language. And you can see here now the specular highlights are there. It's a little bit more pleasing to the eye. Looks a little more realistic. The glow on the weapon is a little softer and warmer. And the big thing is it actually ran fast enough that people could turn it on and the game not be a slideshow. Here's our current rendering of the Martian. The big change here is we went to a skeletal model format. So the vertexes are a lot more accurate. There's not all this float and warping that you would see in a vertex animated model. The other change is the vertex normals are a little more accurate, so you can see more definition in the brain, a little bit more better lighting and shadowing there. And just for comparison's sake, that's what it started from. So that was 7 years of rendering evolution right there. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about id Software and their influence on the open source gaming world. Obviously, they had a huge influence on what we did. Without them, we would have nothing really. We base our engine on that source code. There's a great number of other projects that do the same. Currently, there's probably a good dozen or more very actively, very popular games out there based on their source code. Some of these games have achieved some very good quality that I would say is even close to commercial quality gaming. I think it's interesting that id Software itself released its own free version of Quake 3. I think they looked at some of these free games that were spawned out of their source code and they wanted to get their hands in that freeware pie. I might be wrong about that, but it sure seems like it. id Software, they've always been a bit of a pioneer in the way that they marketed their games to begin with. If you remember, like Wolfenstein, Doom, and Commander Keen, even I think they, even as far back as then, they would release a free episode of the game, and then if people liked that, they would buy the other 3 episodes, and they obviously made millions of dollars doing that. They weren't the first company to obviously open up their engine source, but I do think they're one of the most notorious due to the fact that their engines were on the cutting edge of technologies. When they released Quake, which I believe was in '99, the source code for that, they had just released Quake 3. And when you look back on it, the Quake 3 engine really isn't a whole lot different than the Quake 1 engine. I mean, there's shaders and some improvements in texturing, but the technology gap isn't very large. So that was a kind of a bold move on their part. And because of that, there are now a number of open sourced engines built from this that make really excellent cross-platform and modern gaming solutions that people can use in their projects. And not even just for games, but any kind of rendering. Off the top of my head, I can think of like Dark Places, QFusion, the various Iculus ports, and our own CRX engine. So you can see they've had a pretty far-reaching and positive impact on open source gaming. And I know everybody thinks of them as being kind of the first-person shooter genre, but a lot of these projects are bridging different genres. You now have top-down shooters, side-scrollers, turn-based, role-playing games, even racing games I've seen made out of this source code.